In which war did you serve?
I served in World War II.
Uh-huh. What was your branch of service?
I was in the United States Army.
And what was your highest rank?
Corporal.
In what general locations did you serve?
I was in the United States for about close to 18 months. And then we sailed to Europe and we landed in England. So we stayed in England for a few weeks. And then we were to France only for a couple days. And we went to Belgium. We were there for a couple weeks. And then we were to Germany. And I spent a considerable amount of time in Germany.
Okay. Now, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted.
Okay. And where were you living at the time?
Springfield, Massachusetts.
Do you recall the date?
I think it was in March of '43.
All right. So you were drafted. Why did you pick the service branch you joined?
Because I was a conscientious objector. When I registered as a CO. I had to be interviewed by my draft board, and they accepted my application, and I was classified as 1AO, meaning I was 1A, but I was an objector.
So tell me a little bit more about that, being a conscientious objector. What kinds of forms did you have to fill out?
Well, I did a fair amount of preliminary work on my own before I decided to be a conscientious objector, and then what position I took. And I decided that there are three areas, three levels that a person could be a conscientious objector. They could go in the Army and refuse to carry an arm and be assigned to medical responsibilities. The second would be to go to a facility, a civilian facility that the Air Draft Board would accept as a substitute for service. And then the third level was to say that I would not participate with anything in the government about our military service. And persons that took this position probably ended up having to go to jail.
So how did you decide which level you wanted?
I talked to a number of people who had been referred to me by persons that I knew, and persons who were familiar with the whole position of being conscientious objector. Went to Boston actually and talked to some people there, persons who had joined the French French Ambulance Corps, and that was a way of expressing it. Then after talking to people, I decided that I was going to be Army, and I would take the position that I was objecting to war, would go to serve in the service, would not carry an arms. And so then I indicated this to my draft board, and they said, well, you have to make out an application. They gave me a several-page application, and they had to make 5 copies of it. I think it was 5 copies. I didn't have a typewriter, and we didn't have the copy facilities in 43, 42. So I had to do it all in hand. So I did the 5 copies of the 6 or 7 page application.
So why did you decide you wanted to be a conscientious objector, though?
I was a member of the Methodist Church, and the Methodist Church has a tradition of being very concerned about social issues and war and peace. And I had at that time contacts in the Army with the church. G. Bromley Axlam was the bishop for our area, for Massachusetts at that time, and he was a very outspoken, very eloquent speaker, and he was a conscientious objector. He never had to use that facility because it was not the time that he would be eligible for the draft. And I, at the same time, had contact with him and went to different lectures and so forth that he had. I also had contact with Harold Chase, who was a minister in, I think it was in Pennsylvania. I think it was, well, I'm not sure. He's in Pennsylvania. Later he became the president of Boston University. And I had the privilege of going to a Laurel Park, which was a Methodist campground. And every year they would have a program for students, high school students who were Methodists, to come. And we had a variety of activities and things. And every night we had a speaker. And Harold Pace was always our speaker. He was hired to come to that. And he was an outspoken conscientious objector himself, so that these people really had some influence on me. I was very active in the Methodist Church, and I had very strong feelings about war, as I still do, and so I just could not do and kill.
Tell me about your first days in service. What were they like?
Well, I immediately was subject to the snafu, the mixing up of facilities activity by the Army. Because when I went to Fort Devens, which was a central receiving point for all inductees in Massachusetts, and at that point we would ship out to different facilities and areas where they needed men. And it usually was a training period. And I was assigned to an anti-aircraft unit. And this is obviously contrary to my position in being in arms. And so I arrived at this facility, and what do I do now? So I figured I couldn't go to my commanding officer. I was wrong about that. But I went to my chaplain and told him that she had this, and he evidently put something in the works for the Army. And in the meantime, I called my draft board in Springfield, Massachusetts, told them. They were very upset. They sent me a letter, which was in my record here, indicating that I was right, that I was an AO, and I was one AO. I was not eligible for combat. That was about, I don't remember anything else that I had to do, because I evidently set other things in motion. And draft board evidently contacted the Army, confirmed this, and so that the chaplain somehow did something. And the next thing I knew, I had an order to be shipped out to go to a medical unit in Virginia. I was at the time in Virginia. I forget now what it was. With this anti-aircraft unit. So I was shipped out and went to a medical unit, which was a training program for persons who would be going in medics. We didn't know where we would go, whether we would go to a hospital, what the program was. But then I want me a little more.
Yeah. What was it like? How did you feel when you were first there? Once you got past the snafu?
Well, I was glad that it got straightened out without too much problem. I was afraid it was going to be a problem, but there wasn't. And so I had, I do not remember, I only met one AO person all the time I was in the Army. I'm sure there were other persons who just didn't talk to me about it because I didn't begin any conversations with anybody about it. And It was a good group. I was very comfortable with the group I was with. I was with he was an optometrist, and optometrists were looked down on by ophthalmologists because they were real doctors, they said. uh, and so I made friends with a number of people there. It didn't continue after that, but
Do you remember some of their names?
oh my goodness. I'm afraid I don't.
It's okay.
I think that in my collection of things there's a picture of me with that group up in that company A. I forget what the other part of it was. And then I also, while I was there, I went to a clerk school to be. So, and then later on in my Army life, I had occasion to use this position. But most of the time, I was a medical aid man, and I was attached. I was after my basic training, and we. I don't know why this was, but he didn't know what to do with us. I guess, and we were shipped out and we went to camp. Boston. We went to Chicago, Illinois. We were there for a while. While they were deciding what to do with us. Do with me, anyway.
So how many of you were there? This was all from the medical training?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we all went in different directions. And I ended up with a group of men, there must have been 25, 30 of us. We were in a railroad car. A very comfortable position. We had our own bunks and everything. We left Chicago. We went down south towards Mississippi, turned around, went up towards Camp Butler, North Carolina. And at that point, then I was assigned to Company A, the 303rd Medical Battalion of the 78th Division.
So what kind of training did you get as a medical person?
Well, I have to say that we really didn't get very much. And I look back on it, I was very surprised that we had so little because of what we ended up doing. And I guess because at that time, they didn't know how we would go. We might be just go to a hospital facility and just be extra help. Because I should have received more training while actually dealing with wounds. Because I was assigned later, we were with the infantry unit. The responsibility of giving immediate aid to persons who had been hit. And as well as different areas, different steps that the wounded person would go through with that responsibility. So I feel that they really missed the boat in terms of getting the kind of training we should have had.
Did you go through regular boot camp too? A basic, so that was
Our
physically demanding.
Our basic training was something that was going to be military oriented, medically oriented.
Okay. So do you remember any of your instructors?
No, I don't.
No? Okay. So was it difficult being away from home?
It was. As I look back on it, I don't really. I guess I didn't feel it was a big problem. You know, it was something I asked for. I participated in. So as I look back on it, it really was not a big problem for me.
So after you wound up at Camp Butner, where did you go from there?
Well, we were there for some time. And as I look back on it, and it's reading the history of our 78th Division in a book that I had, evidently it was, the military had some respect for the general that we had for our unit. The general for the 78th was with us when I got there, and you were with us until I shipped out of Germany to come home. As it was, why I say I think they had respect for him was that we were given our this initial responsibility as a unit was to take a dam uh, that was in Germany that held a huge lake behind it. And this dam was very significant because under German control, they had the ability to destroy the dam and flood the whole area to the north, to do anything you wanted with it. And that dam had to be captured so that the troops, our American troops, or the British troops, which were north of us on the German front, would be able to go across the Rhine River because the Rhine enters the ocean through Holland. And I'm safe. I'm a little lost now. Why I started talking about him.
Oh, you were saying about the respect that the general had.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we had these responsibilities that were very, very high level.
Okay. But this is when you first left Camp Butner, you went where?
We stayed there in Butler until got close to being sent overseas. And we went on maneuvers. And the maneuvers are where we go into a situation with other divisions and other large groups of men, so that we have two different sides. The winners and the losers. And so we played war, as it was. We had responsibilities as a division, doing things.
So this was in the United States?
Sure.
Still, yeah.
This was all in Tennessee.
In Tennessee, okay.
I think we went there twice. And one of the units that we were opposing in these maneuvers was the 106th Division. And ironically, they were in Germany. They were stationed just south of us when the Battle of the Bulge happened. And because they were a green unit, had never been in combat before. And the men had been stretched out over a long space, so that they weren't able to defend where they were supposed to be, where they were not supposed to be. And as a result, during the Battle of the Bulge, the whole unit was almost completely wiped out. Either killed, taken pictures, prisoner, were wounded, or escaped. And I mean escape. You really had to take off because they just weren't able to control the onslaught of the Germans. They had tanks, tremendous reinforcements. We were to the north of them, and we were able to escape that because we were prepared to take those dams. And the Army had given us support. We had tank battalions were assigned to us that normally were not with us. We had the 2nd Ranger Battalion, a very high prestige organization. So we had a number of troops that were concentrated in the area of where we were. So when the Germans hit us, we were able to defend ourselves, and they bounced off of us and went south. So they went way.
Now, what time period was this?
This is in December 17th it started, and it went until January, February of this year, before we were finally pushed them back to where they were on December 17th.
Okay, you said that's kind of, let's go back if we can, because you were in, when I last left you were in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Okay, so where did you go from Tennessee?
Went back to our main facility in Camp Butler.
Okay. And then after that, where did you go?
We were in just a few training things. I remember one episode we had. It was counterproductive. Uh, this was a way the Army was going to help prepare us for battle. Uh, we all had, as we were told, they're going to have night march. So we went out about 11, 12 o'clock at night. So it was pitch black, and we went marching somewhere. We came to an area where we were all told to sit down. And they had set up a whole program where they were going to simulate uh, Japanese capturing our unit and what they would do with how they would rape the women, the nurses, and so forth, and what they were doing to civilians. And for most of us, it was it was insulting what they were doing. And what does that mean? They had lights were flashing on buildings that were, it just was ridiculous. We never had one of those again. One of the things that happened was that in the night march that we had, we went through the general's pumpkin patch. He had a farm out there in this area, and we were tromping through his vegetables.
Whose farm was this?
We were told that it was the general's.
Okay. So then after this, you had your night marches in Tennessee. Where did you go after that?
Yeah, that night march was in Butler.
Yeah.
So we came back from Tennessee,
Oh, that was
went to another war maneuvers, and I forget now what that was in Tennessee again.
Okay. And so.
And that was in the area of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, not too far from Nashville.
Okay.
Sure in that area.
Were there other places that you went stateside?
No, it was all took place there in Camp Benton where we were. We had marches and so forth. We had the usual parade where we were inspected and so forth. Nothing really stands out of my mind in terms of the experiences we had.
Okay. So then you went off to Europe.
Well, then what we did was we shipped out of Butner, and we went up to back up to Camp Pickett where I did my basic training. And we sat there as a division. And what we're doing is waiting for them to decide how they're going to use us in Europe. We didn't know at that time we were going to go to Europe. We assumed it was because the big priority was with Europe and getting that out of the picture. So we were there until the end of September, so first part of October. Our whole division shipped out and went up to New York, up to, I forget the name of the camp now, the camp there in New Jersey. And we are actually being prepared to go to Europe. And we got, a number of us got passes to go there. If it's close enough, go for 3-day pass at home in New York City and so forth. So it was a matter of waiting. And then October 13th, Friday 13th, we shipped out of New York Harbor to go to England. And our whole division was in one convoy. And the largest ship in the convoy was the SS Erickson. And that was the one in which the commanding general for our unit was also going over. So we, being at the largest boat, I get seasick easily. I did then more so than I do now. But we didn't, I did get some seasick, but not nearly very bad. But I found out that it was more comfortable to sleep up on the deck. And so many of us did do this because my bunk that I was assigned to was right the first bunk in the front of the boat. So that even though it was a big boat, it would rise and so would fall with the tide. It wasn't. And, oh, no times the boat would drop, and I would actually leave the floor. So I don't think, I may have slept there one night, but this is too bad. And so I and a number of other persons went up and slept on deck and the doors. And that's what I did for the rest of the time when I was on the ship.
How long was the trip?
About 13, 14 days.
Did you eat well on the trip?
Yes, the meals were pretty good. We only had 2 meals a day because there were just so many men on the ship. They just got to feed everybody 3 meals. But it doesn't seem to me as though I was deprived of food. I don't remember that being a hard time. I have in my collection of things my dad, we were all given a card with the number of days on it. And so that when we got our meal, it was punched so that we couldn't get 3 meals. So it was a comfortable time, really. I don't know if we ever came in contact with any U-boats. Didn't know we weren't aware of any naval activity, which was important actually. But there were times that Chicago would zigzag. They wouldn't go straight across the Great Britain. They'd go in different directions. So that if there was any way they would make contact with us, they would not be able to predict where we were going to go.
So you must have been happy to land.
Oh yes, yeah.
And where did you go from there?
We left. We went in Southampton, and we went to Christchurch, England. We had rooms. We had our meals and so forth there. It was somewhere just as we were back in the United States, and we got a lot of passes. We would pass to London, but I just didn't have much money. I couldn't even go to London. So I spent a month at town in Bournemouth, which is a town on the ocean, and near Christchurch. So I had a chance to meet English people, and it was a comfortable time for us, even though we knew we were waiting to go into action.
Do you remember any stories about any of the people you met?
Nothing that stands out.
No? Okay. It was a pleasant time.
You
went to the beach?
Yeah. Now we didn't go swimming, but because this is now October, November. Yeah. But it was comfortable.
Okay. So then after that, you said you went to where? France?
We went to France on what's called a landing ship tanks, LST. These boats were big, flat bottom boats. Flat bottom so that they didn't have a keel that would prevent them from getting as close to the shore as possible. So this boat would go right up on shore if possible, drop their front, a big, actually gangplank for the trips, for the tanks, drop it, and the tank would go off onto the land. So during the invasion, these boats were used for bringing tanks over for the invasion support.
But that's what you used?
This was a terrible trip over. It probably seemed like forever for us. But the News Channel is a rough sea area. And it was really rough that day. And I was more sick there than I was coming over on the Atlantic with SS Erickson.
So when you got to France, where did you land?
I don't think they were more than a day. I think it was kind of just getting settled. And when we arrived, we went to a big, huge field. It's just grass. It was just sort of drizzling. We all had to take our tents out. We all had a half of a pup tent. And so we partnered with the other half of the tent. So we had to set up our tent in the rain. It was a mess. And then the next day, we left by truck to go to Germany, to eastern Belgium, near the German border. And we were there for a few days. I don't remember exactly how long it was. And again, we had passes, so we went to Spa, Belgium, a small town, and the merchants found out quickly that we liked ice cream. And so one of the things that the merchants would send us a small cherry pie with ice cream on it. So little things like that. So
Now, who sent you that? That was.
these were the merchants, the store people there in Belgium, the Spa. Figured this out quickly. And then now it was December, and it turned out that we moved into Germany, and it was just over the border, and this was the area where all the German pillboxes were. It was the Siegfried line, and we had to go through the Siegfried line. So our troops had to capture the pillboxes. These pillboxes were huge, one-story cement facilities. They had a main entrance. Maybe there's another entrance. I don't know. And there were no windows. There were small areas that the Germans could look out and see what was going on outside. But there were no other contacts with the outside except through these. And it was well fortified. And the way it was structured was, I don't know how thick the cement walls were, but they were huge. I know that our artillery and the German artillery, because later the German artillery was shooting at us in their pillboxes, couldn't get the things. There was no, and the way our men would capture it would be to get somebody up there and throw hand grenades into the opening. They used flamethrowers and other ways of being able to capture these. It wasn't as big a deal as the German thought it would be to capture these pillboxes. And they were staggered on so that there was just a whole line of these pillboxes on the German front.
So this was. Do you remember what that battle was, or was it a particular battle, or
No, it wasn't.
Just,
no.
It was not. It was just.
I know we had the first day, the second day, we'd gone up to get some American soldiers. They had, and I remember we got to the area of the pillbox, and some American soldiers were there with German prisoners that they had gotten, and the German artillery observers saw us at the pillbox somehow, and they started firing their 88s at us, and so we all went in the pillbox. They couldn't touch us then. And then I remember we came. Well, one of the things I used to do when I had any kind of free time, I would sort of go around looking at stuff. I was inquisitive about the way Germans lived and things what I did. So I remember I was going through the pillbox, and this German medic was with me. And I remember finding a gun, and I picked up another gun too, and I dropped this, and he turned up, I picked up and handed it back to me. But it turned out to be just a flare gun, so it wasn't important. But I did get a German P-38, which is a revolver, which was a very famous gun, which I brought back. So when the firing stopped, we all went back out again. And I was there with maybe 10, 15 Germans that had been captured, and about 2 or 3 soldiers. And I remember I look at this soldier and I see that he's got an emblem on, which I knew was an emblem for the Gestapo. And it turns out that we had heard that Hitler and his entourage decided what they're going to do is they're going to assign one Gestapo member to every German unit. And that their intentions were any German that tried to surrender, because now we're getting a fair number of German prisoners, because they knew the war was over. Once we got into Germany, it's just ridiculous. And so the instructions to the Gestapo were to shoot the German soldier in the back if he tried to surrender. So he was this man with the Gestapo. So I walk over and I took his pen in my hand. And I said, was ist das? What is that? And he said, Panzer, means tank. Well, I know what. And I said, das ist nicht Panzer, das ist Gestapo. And while I'm saying this, I noticed that all the other soldiers, 14 of them, were watching us intently. What was I going to do now? And so, as I said to Gestapo, this other German, he moved his head yes and yes. And I remember I just ripped those off his shirt, and it was over then. Think about it later, that maybe it might have been better if the men back and the Americans would know that he had been a Gestapo. But it might be that any one of those soldiers might have told the Americans that that was a Gestapo. Then I remember another episode at that whole day that when he came out of the bunker, there were two men on the ground between two tanks, American and German tanks, were having a battle. And they were right in the area of the fighting. And it was a German medic working on an American infantryman who had been hit. And that's the only time I saw something like that. We went through the same thing ourselves later on. So this was the 13th, the day that we jumped off. But 4 days later, the Battle of the Bulge started. And so at that time, we went into holding. It was just a holding pattern to hold the Germans, so they couldn't pass us. And it was when the Battle of the Bulge started, it was a very anxious time, because we learned very quickly that German troops dressed in American soldiers' uniforms were parachuted in behind their lines, which was in the area where we were down below. And they were then being used to give misdirections. They had signs showing the Americans as they were retreating which the way to go, and it was a way of directing them out of it, into the fight rather than so that was only that we heard about this happening. We never saw one. I got some parachute material that I took, that I kept as a souvenir. Because it was one of the significant weather situation during the Battle of the Bulge, where it was very cloudy, and it was either raining or snowing. It was a mess. So the airplanes were not able to come up because they couldn't identify where we were. So we had no air support at all. And this is why the Germans were able to get as far as they did. Because otherwise we really had air superiority, and we could have really prevented it. So it was when Patton's Third Army troops came up to help the Americans in Bastogne, where they had resisted the Germans. And then that was really a turning point. And then we started to get troops to push the Germans back to the areas where we were on December 17th when it started.
Well, how close were you to the Battle of the Bulge then?
Well, I was in it.
You were in it?
We were in it.
So what?
Well, we were actually very near the Malmedy, where the Germans committed a real atrocity. They had captured about 100 Americans and they had them all in this large area, which was next to a forest, but it was an open area. There were a couple of trucks there, and the trucks, after all the Americans huddled together, they put up the curtains, and of course the trucks had machine guns, and they just killed all the Americans in it.
And you saw that?
So, no, I didn't see that. I just heard about it because that was in our area. And as we learned later on, there were German generals who were infantry generals. They were very upset because they felt, now here they were trying to get Americans to surrender, and now the Americans know that if you surrender, you're going to get killed anyway. So don't surrender. So they made it more difficult for their own men by doing this atrocity.
So
It was,
you must have seen a lot of casualties.
yes.
What was that like?
We were what's called a collecting station. In a division, we had a medical battalion. And the medical battalion had 4 companies, A, B, C, and D. There were 3 regiments in a division. So each company had a regiment that they were responsible for. We were responsible for the 309th Regiment. There was one 310th and 311th. And so our whole battalion served in these 3 regiments, plus the company D was what was called a clearing station. So the way it was, the infantry unit itself had aid stations, and this had a doctor and medical aid men, and they would be with the troops as they progressed, so that when they got hit, they could be cared for. So that was the first step. When the person would hit would be the aid station, the company aid station, and then we would pick them up at the aid station. Our ambulances would go down to them, and then we would either go with the ambulance to do the carrying of the men, or we would already be there. So that the wounded were then brought back to our collecting station. And there we had 3 or 4 doctors, and we had men who had been trained really like nurses to assist the doctors. And anybody, and this is almost everyone at that point, was sent back to what's called the clearing station. And that was Company D. They cleared what was in the company, in the collecting stations. And then persons that were severe enough wounds, which are going to go further back, then they were picked up and sent back to division facilities. So that's the way our units were set up within the division itself.
So what was a typical day like for you when you were like in the Battle of the Bulge?
One day, it was towards the end of the battle and things were beginning to clear, and the air started to clear, and some American planes came in and started to strafe us because we were at the front lines, and there was no way for them to know that we were actually American troops. And it was interesting that some of the infantry started firing at the planes. It was ridiculous. They were Americans, and they were strafing it, but by firing at them, it made them even worse. It made them feel we were Germans. Whereas some of the Americans, they sent up these colored flares. Now we had a system during that time. I guess it was a system in all the armies, American. Then we had color flares. We had red, yellow, green, so forth. And what we did is we sent up a specific colored flare, and it was like a password to the airplanes, to the men in the planes, that we were American troops, so don't fire on us. And every day the color would change, and so therefore the password would change. And so we immediately saw some of the infantry were sending up. We didn't have any colored flares. Sending up the colored flares. So as soon as they saw this, they stopped the fire. So the Americans flew off then to find better targets.
But on a typical day, were you right out there with, the troops then? You were.
Yes,
Yeah.
we were, because for us, once they had established themselves south of us, 106th Division and so forth, their emphasis was more there. The Germans obviously on the other side of our front lines, but they didn't do much attacking because they knew that we had such tremendous support. They were able to withstand it. And so we would get occasional casualties, not very many at that time. So it was a difficult time, but not a difficult time for us as much as it was for other men, especially the 106th Division.
Were there, you wore a helmet that had the Red Cross, yes?
What we had a helmet, and there was 4 red crosses on a white circle, and the red cross it was on the front, back, and both sides. And we also had an armband that we wore. I only had one. I don't know if other people had 2. I guess some people did have 2. So that that's all we had to identify themselves was that armband and the helmets. Our
Did that keep medics safe?
Well, it did. I'm not sure. I know that there were occasions that it didn't. Because I had a friend who was killed as an aide crawling out to help an American soldier.
Who was that?
And he had been killed. He was from California. I don't remember his name.
And where was that?
That was in the early days up in Germany. Because after in January, then we decided to resume our fighting again. Our offensive. I remember another one. His name was Cohen, and he had left our unit and had gone to be an aide man. And I remember he was showing me he had a P-38. He was loaded. I said, "What are you carrying a gun for?" He said, "My name's Cohen. When the Germans captured me, they didn't say my name Cohen. They know that that's German. That's an American Jew." And he said, "What do you think my life is worth?"
And he was a medic.
He was a medic. Now that might have influenced what he had never captured, so as far as I know, he wasn't captured.
Are there any other memorable experiences from?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I remember one time when I captured 3 Germans.
You captured 3 Germans? Wow.
It was after we captured the jam. In the process of capturing the dam, 9 of us got the Bronze Star for our work with this 311th. What happened was that the unit in the 311th Regiment, ours was the 309th, was being prepared to do a night offensive. They were going to go through the German lines. This was near the dam. And the commander for the 311th Regiment called our commanding officer and said, "Do you have 12 men you can send me? Because we need to have persons who are medical aid persons who can go with the infantry and bring back wounded." And he said, "Yes, of course." It's then not me. So 12 of us were selected to go. And it was going to be that night. And one man in the 12 suddenly got diarrhea. And he was scared as hell. He did not want to go through German lines. And so he didn't go. And the most interesting thing happened. We all knew what was happening with this guy because he never had diarrhea before. We know he was scared and he wouldn't go. Didn't go. Well, he couldn't go. And later, I remember that I knew a single man talked about that. How so and so had got so sick and he wouldn't go. So in a sense, he was betraying us too because it was making us one man short. Uh, but we had to go through the lines, and wherever a man was hit, we had to give him aid to stop the bleeding, prepare for the trip back. I remember I heard a man calling for help, and so I said, "Go ahead, and I'll go over head to him. Someone can come back, and we'll take him back." And so I crawled out, and I'm going out, and a German machine gunner just over the rise, and he was firing. And I was able to get down slow enough so I was not in danger. Well, I was in danger, of course. But I got out to the man, and he was calling for his mother. I remember early on one of the maneuvers, a truck with men on it turned over. They were racing in the road, and he hit a whole bunch of men underneath the truck. And this little stream, some of the men actually drowned. And I remember men calling for their mother then. So he stopped once I got to him, and I said, "Well, I'll take care of it." So he had been hit in the leg, and I cut off part of his uniform, and if I had to take his foot out, his boot off or not. But then I dressed the wound, stopped the bleeding, and he was in a lot of pain, so I gave him a tetanus shot. And then my friend came back to help me with a letter, and so we put him on a letter and carried him on. Now, a letter is made with two poles on each end, and so it's built for four men to carry it, because a man who's been wounded is fully dressed and armed, fully dressed with all the equipment and so forth. And so a man could be 200 pounds, could be 250 pounds. It's, all the time I was there, I never had anybody more than one person to help me. There's always two of us on the litter. And so it wasn't easy. And that night, it was raining and sleet. It was a mess, and it was dark. We had set up, I don't know how they did this, but they had this artificial moonlight. They could set something so you could tell where it was coming from, but you knew that the sky was a little lighter from this artificial moonlight. So I think we had something at that time. So we got the man out from where he was and went up this very narrow dirt road. And on this road, the Germans had put some tank mines to destroy any of our tanks. And so the road was heavily lined with tank mines. Now, the tank mines were made so that they would be set off only if a very heavy weight went over it, like a tank. So I didn't realize at the time that that they were made that way. The mine was only about 3 feet long. It was a metal box, and I stepped on one. Nothing happened because it was made for tanks. But still, there's no feeling about what it went. And I remember that time when we were carrying him back, that the German who had been firing at us a little while ago was a machine gunner, and he evidently had been hit by one of our men, and he was calling for help. Well, there was nothing we could do. We were carrying this wounded man. We'd have to come back for him. Later, when he came back, we couldn't find him. We didn't hear him, and we were going to go off into an area looking for him because we know he was being false about the comrade business. So I don't know what happened to him.
So you would help anybody who...
Yeah, that's right. The German was doing to our man.
Yeah. Do you remember the name of the soldier that you carried out?
No.
No. And that was when you got a Bronze Star.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all got Bronze Stars for that night.
Yeah. And that was, what was that near? That was
What?
the town, or where was that?
Kesternick.
Oh.
Kesternek. Kesternick. And I think that was the night that one of our men from the 78th Division got a Medal of Honor for what he did. I think that, I'm not sure.
Did you have other medals as well?
Well, we got another Bronze Star, and I don't know what that was for. I got that after I got home. So I don't know and I never really wrote to the end to find out what it was.
So you have 2 Bronze Stars.
2 Bronze Stars.
Okay. Did you
Now,
have...
it was just, so then we captured the dam. And then at that point, the Americans and the British were free to be able to cross the Rhine. The Rhine runs north in Germany up through Holland, empties out of Holland. And so they were all north of us. And what happened, because I'm very inquisitive, at any time we had a lull in the fighting, and then we weren't needed in terms of bringing wounded back. We have little time. I would go off exploring. And I remember, and I think this is at Remagen. I'm exploring, and the farmers always seemed to be located in farm areas. This farm had I remember this. It was a large building. The home was a large building of the farmer, and in the back of the house there was a large chicken coop. And I went around back, and I'm going by the chicken coop, and then I hear the comrade. They whirl around, and there's 3 Germans, armed, they're infantrymen who had been hiding in the chicken coop, just looking for somebody to surrender to. But it was, I mean, at some point I was concerned about, who was it? And so they came out, and I indicated, put the weapons down and hands on your head. And so I brought them back to our commanding officer. I was thinking about it, me, I've been medic with all my medical equipment, marching down the road behind 2 or 3 Germans with their hands on their helmet, who had surrendered.
So that was near Remagen.
That was near Remagen, yeah.
So what was this? So you were part of that as well, Remagen?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, we understood, we had heard that as we were crossing the plains between the border and the Rhine River, that well, now what was your question?
I just asked you to tell me a little bit about Remagen.
Yeah. Well, another episode crossing this plain, which I mentioned before Remagen.
Okay.
Again, this is the lull in the fighting, so it's some free time, so on and off, and it was a little farm area where we were living in. There was a lot of woods and so forth after that. And I went down this road, and I came across a German regimental trailer. Now, because we were making rapid progress across those plains, this German unit evidently started to retreat, and retreated very quickly because they left their trailer with all their supplies and so forth where they had been. I don't know whether I checked for a booby trap or not. If I didn't, it was silly because he could have booby trapped it. But anyway, they didn't. And I went into the trailer, and this trailer was left with records, pictures, all sorts of things, plus a lot of supplies of German medals. And I took what I could get, and I brought them back, so I still have them. And these are pictures. One medal is for fighting on the Eastern Front with the Russians, and I had another one where an soldier who had fought against the underground of this country. They would get around for fighting the partisans, and so I have two of those, and those are very valuable today because they're so rare. So I got a lot of medals and so forth, and so I'm back and put them in my bag to keep. So as we were approaching Ramadan, we didn't know it, but we understood later on that they were planning to give us a rest time because we just went through a big battle with the, the dams, and so that we needed some rest time. And so we were approaching Ramadan, we were approaching the Rhine, and we suddenly heard that they had captured a bridge across the Rhine. So everything changed. And the orders from France was to get every American troop they could over that bridge so that we would have our own bridgehead and we would never have to cross the Rhine without. And so that's what we did. And we were rushed. We went by ambulance, of course, to the bridge. And I have some pictures that I took during the crossing of that bridge. And so we went over, and we set up a collection station at an old winery that had, of course, been vacated. And it was at this time that I again went out exploring when things had slowed down a little, and I came across a German who had been killed. And he was in it was in a large area, grass and so forth, with a few trees. And he was a redhead. And I remember he looked so young. And this is where I got another P-38. He had a revolver, which I took for my souvenirs. But I was taken with it. He was so young, and he must have at least be a high, either an officer or a high non-commissioned officer, because of having a revolver. Those were not issued to the average German infantryman. And another thing happened here at Remagen that I didn't learn about until later. We had earlier, our infantry had taken a town where there was a wholesale place for our photographic equipment. And there was a building that had a lot of Eastman Kodak equipment, including a lot of film. And so a lot of us got film for cameras, those who had cameras. And I always kept a roll of film in my jacket. And so one day I needed film, and we took it out. And as I started over, I realized that there was a puncture through the box, the film was in a box and a roll and so forth. And I took out the film, the roll of film, and I saw metal. That was a piece of shrapnel that had gone in my jacket, went through the box, the wooden cardboard box, then through the roll of film, and embedded itself in the wooden spool that held the film. And so I think when was the time that I was exposed to shrapnel, which could be exploding bombs?
When was that? Where were you when that happened?
I remember that it may have been at Ramadan, because I remember that the Germans were trying desperately to bomb the bridge to stop the influx of Americans. And so that we were regularly receiving fire from German planes. And I remember when they came in on them, and their bombs obviously weren't very effective. They weren't, they weren't hitting the bridge. But we were in a house that was a building close to the house, to the bridge. And I remember being knocked down by this explosion. And I wanted to go to that place at the time. I really don't have any hard facts on when it was that it happened. But I still have that roll of film. I mean, the roll of the shrapnel.
Well, do you have any other memories about your service, particularly before we move on to? I just wanted to talk about your kind of everyday life and staying in touch with family.
Well, when because when the American forces moved and captured ground that the Germans were holding, all the citizenry had fled. Many of them had been told that we had a lot of black troops that loved being raping American German girls, and so they were all sorts of things. I remember we saw a picture. I never saw a poster showing black men, and so they even said propaganda about what was going to happen when the Americans got there. Well, that just never happened, but they had no idea. So they all evacuated too. So that as we moved up, we always had the facilities of vacant farmhouses to live in. So we didn't have the problems of having to dig foxholes. And since many of them were farms, I remember once we took a house, and we all went in, took rooms that we were going to sleep in, and we found some chickens. And I remember that we took these chickens and put them in a room next to us. So next morning we had eggs, so we fried some eggs. They had fresh eggs, and up to that time it's always been artificial eggs.
So how did you stay in touch with family?
Well, we wrote. I don't know, and I guess they sent home stuff too. Since I remember a German flight they sent home, and my mother said that when they got it, it was very musty and everything, and he took it out, and I think it was a big 8-footer. I had an 8-foot thing, 8 feet by 3 or 4 feet, and they hung it outside with a clothesline to dry, to air out. She immediately gets telephone calls asking if she'd changed political parties. So, and we got mail too. We had a man in the company who was our mailman, and he would want to go up the chain to where the mail was being delivered. And our address was APO 78, which was our unit number. And that's how the mail came in. And then he had stamps and so forth so that we could use them to send mail out. And one of the officers was the censor who had to read all mail before it went out.
And this is the end of part 1 interview with Hubert Woodard.